What's up, Barnhill family, and welcome back to your home for all things combat sports.
Yo.
So, guys, today we're diving into the co-main event of the first UFC pay-per-view card of 2025, and we've got a great bantamweight title fight, Merab Dvalishvili versus Umar Nurmagomedov. We're going to jump into the odds because Umar's a pretty big favorite here. We're going to talk about the stylistic matchup of these two guys, and then finish up on a few key things to watch for that could determine the outcome of this fight. So, Nick, want to jump right into the glaring elephant in the room.
Let's do it.
Umar Nurmagomedov is almost a 3-1 favorite here in this fight against a guy, Merab, the champion, who's on a double-digit fight win streak.
Yeah.
I mean, that what gives here? Now, the only thing I can think of is the fact that Umar can probably, in a stylistic sense, match some of the grappling of Merab. Maybe not the pace, but the skill. And then he probably does have a reasonable advantage on the feet, if we're being honest. So maybe the odds makers are thinking that Umar can keep the fight where he wants it and then ultimately have his advantage there. But I think that's going to be easier said than done. Let's start off with breaking down the fight and then giving me your thoughts on the odds being where they are.
Well, the odds are a little off to me, but, who am I to say? I think that Umar Nurmagomedov deserves every bit of hype that's behind him, and he deserves this title shot. And if there's anybody that deserves to be a favorite over Merab in the bantamweight division, it's Umar. I can't imagine anybody else would come into a title fight being the favorite after what we've seen Merab do lately. But yeah, this fight to me is so cool because it's truly like a clash of styles, and more importantly, wrestling styles. Because we were kind of talking about this in the last fight. Arman and Islam, they fight kind of similar, but also very different from each other. Umar and Merab fight very different from each other, even though a lot of people like to just lump them into this category of wrestlers. I'd be perfectly fine with lumping Merab into a category of wrestlers that aren't the best strikers in the world. But Umar doesn't belong in that group. Umar, his striking looks just as good as his grappling. Yeah. I don't think it's quite his go-to like his grappling is. I think at the human level, at the base level, he is a grappler. And what we saw against Beksat Almakhan was Beksat was having some success on the feet. UFC debut, we don't really know much about him. Umar didn't like that at all, and he took that fight to the ground immediately. And then his ability to keep the fight on the ground as long as he wanted to was very impressive. Now, Beksat and Merab are two very different people. And while Beksat's probably very difficult to take to the ground, I would venture to say Merab is probably the hardest person to take to the ground. Yeah. Right? We're dealing with anatomically one of the best bodies to prevent takedowns, right? Merab is 5'5", probably.
Yep. Strong, muscular.
He doesn't have long limbs or anything like that. He's very hard to get under and get to the ground. So I'm really interested in seeing how Umar gets this fight to the ground, if he wants to at all, because I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that Umar doesn't even need to take this fight to the ground at all. I feel like he could go out there and kind of have a striking clinic against Merab Dvalishvili. And if Merab goes out there with the same game plan that he had against Sugar Sean, that could be a little bit difficult for Umar to find his groove and find some strikes early on if Merab's going to fight from two arm lengths away. But if Umar's able to avoid the hesitation that Sugar Sean had from the takedown, right, then he can close that distance and not worry as much as Sugar Sean did. Now, Merab Dvalishvili kind of froze Sugar Sean because Sugar knew every time I get close, I'm going to go to the ground, and I don't like my chances in this fight when I'm that close to him. So it's very difficult for the striker to hit the grappler when he's so far away. And then that tends to frustrate you. We saw that in Sugar Sean. All he wanted to do was just punch Merab in the face, but Merab's on the other side of the cage every time that Merab wants to be. And then when Merab wants to fight, he engages with you and figures out how he's going to do that from there. But for me, this fight, Umar really does have some of the same issues facing Merab that Sugar Sean had, because if Merab decides to stay at that far range, Umar's going to have to close some distance, which is going to lead into some wrestling. And I believe, just like Arman Tsarukyan's going to look for the first takedown of the night on Islam, I believe Merab's going to look for a takedown on Umar very early, and we're going to see a little bit of a wrestling competition to see who can scramble better, who can move better. And quite frankly, that's going to be very fun for the fans to see. I think there's going to be a lot of cool exchanges that take place. The scrambling of Merab is what's so impressive, but Umar's ability to defend takedowns, his ability to not be basically not turn into a dead fish when somebody gets him to the ground. If Merab's able to get Umar to the ground, you can rest assured knowing Umar is going to fight like hell. I always use this analogy, and it might sound funny to some people, but if you're a fisherman and you catch a big fish and you want to take a picture with that fish, well, when you first catch it and he's still alive, he's fighting like hell. He's trying to get back in the water, and it's very hard to take that picture, right?
Yeah.
Think of that as a grappler. It's very hard to hold somebody when they're moving in every direction and trying to scramble.
Yeah.
Right. Now, once you've calmed them down, or once the fish has died or whatever, then it's a little bit easier to take your picture.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's kind of what we're going to see here. If Umar decides to take this fight to the ground, we're going to see a little bit of that. And if Merab does it, of course, we need to see him keep Umar on the ground. And the biggest issue for me, and the reason I'm kind of leaning with the odds makers on this fight, and I'm not going to give my prediction, of course, but Merab Dvalishvili is very good at dealing damage. He's very good at top position. He's not exactly a submission ace. He's not exactly a finisher. And 25 minutes with Umar is going to be very difficult to get him down time and time again and just win all those rounds. Umar is very explosive. He's very good with his striking. So I think Merab's kind of plagued with that same thing Colby Covington's plagued with, where yes, he's really good. He's going to fight you for 25 minutes, but he doesn't really have a way to get you out of there. And when you have a guy who can finish people very well, like we saw Joaquin Buckley, like we're going to see Umar Nurmagomedov, when you see people that can finish fights really well and you give them 25 minutes to do so, it sort of gets hard for the guy that likes to go the full distance and doesn't really have elite level striking and doesn't have elite level submission skills. So for me, Merab does have a little bit of an uphill battle. I think this is going to be a harder title fight for him than the Sugar Sean fight was, significantly harder. But all in all, I do think it's a good fight. I think that it's going to be closer than the odds are maybe appearing, and Merab might just be that guy.
Yeah, no, Merab certainly has a chance in this fight, and I don't want to let the odds kind of fool us into thinking that he doesn't. Right. Now, I do agree with, I see why the odds makers have this where they have it.
Yeah.
Because if I'm being 100% honest, the road to victory for Merab is much narrower than the road to victory for Umar.
Yes.
Because Merab doesn't submit people, he doesn't knock people out. His success comes from grappling, getting people down, maintaining top position, doing damage with the ground and pound, rinsing and repeating that over a 3 or 5 round period of time, in this case 5, and getting his hand raised via unanimous decision at the end of it.
Yeah.
Umar, yes, as you said, he is a wrestler at heart, but truthfully, he started his martial arts career striking.
Wow.
You know, he was doing kickboxing, and then Khabib, his cousin, said basically, like, if you want to round out your game, you need to learn how to wrestle, especially if you want to compete at the highest levels of MMA.
Boy, was he right.
Now, he started very young, so I mean, you can't say that he's a striker that did wrestling later in life.
Right.
He did. The thing about Umar is he did both from a very young age, which is what makes him so lethal. But Umar Nurmagomedov, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't try to take this fight to the ground at all. Because I think Umar is a smart fighter. Khabib is a smart cornerman. Where do they have an advantage? They have a massive advantage on the feet.
Massive.
Umar's kicks, his head kicks, his push kicks, he almost does that push kick to the body, and then once you see that coming a few times, he'll fake it and go straight to the face with it. He's very effective with that.
And Merab's a shorter target.
Easier to hit to the head if you're a shorter target. He's got great question mark kicks. He whips that front leg up really well, almost like a karate style Stephen Wonderboy Thompson type of moment there. So Umar, I think, is going to come into this fight saying, look, if I can just defend Merab's takedowns, I can have this fight in the bag pretty easily because I can turn this into a kickboxing match. And then I'm kickboxing my whole life, and I'm kickboxing against a wrestler who's trying to round out his game by learning some striking just sufficient enough to get to his grappling offensive. Right. So it becomes a very lopsided kickboxing match. And so that's why I think the odds are in Umar's favor because Umar is such a good grappler. Now with Sean O'Malley, you mentioned Merab staying around the edge of the cage and keeping a distance to where Sean couldn't strike. And Sean, why did Sean oblige to that? And what you saw in the 5th round was Sean said, screw it, I'm going to lose this fight anyways. I got to take the fight to Umar. Right. He did it, and he actually ended up with some success at the end of the fight. It was just a little bit too little, too late. But with Umar, he has no fear of being taken down.
Right.
And that's what makes him such a dangerous striker. And a lot of people don't think about that being connected, but it very much is. If you have a striker who's just as good of a grappler as he is a striker, then he's not afraid of being taken down.
Right.
Think of when Khabib knocked down Conor. That surprised everybody.
Right.
But why was that able to happen? Because Conor was so respectful and that's the only way that I can use the word respectful when I'm talking about Conor and Khabib, but he was so respectful of Khabib's grappling that he didn't even consider the striking.
Right. The threat of the takedown was enough to paralyze him.
Exactly. And so that won't be the case with Umar. He's like, oh, you want to take me down?
Great.
Go right ahead. Watch my scrambles. Watch what I do from bottom position. Watch my reversals. Watch what I do. I'm going to reverse. I'm going to take top position on you.
Well, he can submit better than Merab as well.
Yeah, he's a better submission ace. So I don't think he's worried. And if Merab was like a Charles Oliveira, where he could get you down and he had the highest, submission percentage in UFC history,
right,
that might cause some pause for Umar. But Umar's like, what's the worst going to happen? You're going to double leg me and take me down?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll get back up and we'll keep going, because over 25 minutes, guess what? I'm going to find that shot that's going to end the night for you.
Right.
So I think for Merab, it's really important, and I know he's not a finisher, but it's really important to do big damage.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's got to get Umar down, and you're not just going to get Umar's attention by taking him to the ground and holding him there.
Right.
You're going to get Umar's attention by taking him down, advancing position, and landing some massive elbows and punches from top position to where Umar gets up after round one. Maybe he's got a busted up eye. Maybe his nose is a little bloody, and he's like, whoa, I don't just want to rush in on that guy again, because if he doesn't, then I'm concerned for Merab in the sense that Umar is going to just not respect the wrestling at all, walk straight in and make Merab engage with him on the feet, which is a place that he can really exploit Merab. Now, one thing I think is the X factor to look out for in this. We don't know how good Umar's cardio is going to be at 5 rounds.
Right.
We do know how good Merab's is going to be. So I think the first 2 or 3 rounds could be tough for Merab, especially if Umar's walking him down, not respecting the wrestling and landing big strikes.
Right.
But if Merab can successfully get a few takedowns in those rounds, do some damage, maybe steal one or two of the first 3 rounds, then come rounds 4 and 5, Umar might be breathing a little heavy. He is a muscular guy for 135. He's a pretty big guy for 135. Not the biggest, but we don't know where his cardio is going to be from minute 16 to 25.
Yeah.
We do know where Merab's cardio is going to be. So look out for that. Look for Merab to do enough damage from the top position to try to gas Umar out. So even if he does lose 2 of the first 3 rounds, he comes in strong at the end of the fight and is able to close out the show, winning a razor close decision.
Yeah, I'm really excited for this fight, but I hope it goes to the championship rounds, because I want to see what Umar's gas tank is made out of. Obviously, Merab can go 10 rounds with a UFC top contender, but I want to see how Umar does, and with all the explosive striking that he likes to do, and even the grappling exchanges, those are exhausting, whether you're on the offense or the defense, especially somebody that knows how to counter wrestle and defensively wrestle what your attacks are, giving them. It can be very difficult and can zap the energy. So I'm interested in seeing if Umar does try to take it to Merab, take him down early, kill all of the confidence that he has that he's the superior ground fighter. And if he does that, I see Merab having a very hard time building momentum and building confidence in his game plan. It's very interesting to me, because I feel like Merab liked what the game plan that he went out there with Sugar Sean with, and I think the distance was a friend of his. I also think it can be a friend of his against Umar, but maybe not so much, and he is going to have to bring the fight to Umar a little bit in these certain pockets, especially early, like you said, because as the fight goes on, Umar will tend to fade, and I think at a faster rate than Merab. But like you said, the Umar storm that he brings in the very beginning of the fight is a lot to deal with, and Merab's really going to have to weather that before he can start to excel later in the fight.
Yeah, I can't wait. And I think that's an awesome point that you brought up about Umar potentially looking for a takedown on Merab early.
Thank you.
Just to zap his confidence, because confidence could be a big thing in this fight.
Well, and think about how much energy Merab would let out if he got taken down in the first round.
Yeah.
He would go crazy, and that could actually zap his gas tank. We could see the cardio machine Merab start to fade a little bit if Umar is able to utilize grappling, because like we always say, grappling's the most intense thing you can do in an MMA fight defensively. Defensive grappling is the most intense, but the second most intense is offensive. It's very exhausting to try to hunt for takedowns against somebody that knows what they're doing.
Absolutely.